Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation, Growing Your Firm Through New Client Niches. I'm Bill Carlino, Managing Director at Transition Advisors, and I'll serve as moderator for this afternoon's presentation. Once again, we want to take time to thank you for joining us this afternoon. We know you have a busy schedule. Hopefully you've all navigated the September 15th filing deadline and are preparing earnestly for the October 15th. Okay, just a little bit about us, and then we'll get right into our presentation this afternoon. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our firm, we're a full-service consulting firm. We exclusively serve the accounting profession. We have customized solutions. We have 2 decades of experience. We represent the buyer or the seller, and our services include buyer-seller introductions, M&A, transaction structure, document preparation, review, valuation, and due diligence, as well as post-transaction business planning, partnership agreements, retreats, general consulting, and coaching. And for more information, you can visit our website at www.transitionadvisors.com. You see our toll-free number there, or you can email me directly at wcarlino@transitionadvisors.com. Regarding today's presentation, Transition Advisors is a proud and approved sponsor on the National Registry of Sponsors per the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, or NASBA. To receive the 1 CPE credit for today's presentation, however, you must complete 2 requirements. You must participate in the 3 polling questions that will be asked during the presentation. Please note, GoToWebinar monitors your participation. So in order to receive full credit, you must answer all 3 questions. You also must complete an online evaluation. Please note that a link to an online evaluation will be emailed to you after the webinar. It must be completed and returned to us before we can email your CPE certificate of completion. Your certificate will be emailed to you within 10 business days of receiving your evaluation. The survey will appear immediately after the session ends. Please take a minute to complete our survey before closing your browser for GoToWebinar. The survey is important for us at Transition Advisors. It helps us provide you quality information and gives us suggestions for content for future presentations. And it would also give you the opportunity to request a copy of today's presentation. And it's your CPE sponsor. The control panel, just a few words, and then we'll get into our presentation. In order to fully participate in the webinar, please take time to familiarize yourself with the GoToWebinar located directly in the right hand of your screen. The orange arrow on the top of the control panel minimizes the control panel. During the presentation, all participants are muted, but communicate with us in the question box toward the bottom of the control panel. Please send us any questions or comments you may have during the webinar. And then, time permitting, I'll try to answer all your questions following today's presentation. And of course, we welcome and encourage your full participation. A heads up on a few upcoming webinars from Transition Advisors. On October 13th, we'll conduct one dealing with internal succession, the 5 steps to making it work in your firm. On November 13th, we'll look at mergers of accounting firms, avoiding the roadblocks and understanding the market. And December 3rd, we'll close out the year with understanding what your partnership agreement should include. And of course, you can visit our website at the web address below for more information on future presentations. And without further ado, on behalf of Transition Advisors, again, thank you for taking the time and enjoy today's webinar. Okay, as we start, let's look at today's agenda. A few things we'll take a look at. What are today's fastest growing client niches, both among top 100 firms and small and mid-sized firms. We'll look at how the economy has slowed down traditional growth. We'll also take a look at how to begin a new practice area from scratch and some major hurdles firms face when starting new practice niches. Okay, as many of you know, there are basically 3 ways to grow your practice. There's our little friend here on the bottom right-hand corner with a little sapling. There's organic, which is 1 client at a time, which is the traditional way many accounting firms have grown, particularly the small ones. But with the economy, the past couple of years the way it is, it's sort of made organic growth a little more difficult. Then, of course, there's mergers. And anybody who's picked up a trade publication or even consumer publications that deal with the accounting profession, you'll know that mergers have been at or near the top of headlines. We'll explore a little bit about the background of mergers, what's prompting all these mergers, and what that does to client niches. And of course, there's adding new practice niches, and we'll see how some mergers have been consummated just to add new practice niches. Okay, let's look at the accounting profession from sort of a 30,000-foot view at a glance. The revenue for the accounting profession, and this is dealing only with the public accounting profession, is about $72 billion. And that includes everything from the big four, the biggest firm in the world, Deloitte, to the smallest sole practitioner. The number of firms is about 87,000. Again, that goes from the big four to the sole practitioner. You hear a lot of industry figures about the size of firms, maybe some being 45,000. That's usually a figure that's given by the AICPA, but you should remember that the 45,000 firms that the AICPA gives out are members of the AICPA, and not all accounting firms are members of the Institute. So 87,000 is probably a lot more reflective of the actual population of the public accounting space. The annual growth rate between 2007 and 2012, it was about 2%. There's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, the economy was number one. Prior to 2007, you saw a lot of high single-digit or even double-digit growth for many firms. But the economy has kind of put the brakes on that. It's starting to rebound, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later in the presentation. And the annual growth rate projected for 2011 through 2016, just slightly above that at about 2.6%. And the growth rate projected for 2012-2017 overall is about 1.85%. And we'll delve into that a little bit later as well. And that's from our folks at IBIS World. It's an international researcher, and they do a lot of retail industries as well as professional service industries. Okay, as I mentioned at the outset, we have a series of 3 polling questions, all of which you may answer, you have to answer, to receive CPE certification. And the first one deals with how many client practice areas does your firm currently offer? 2 to 4, 5 to 7, 8 to 10, or more? And we're going to keep the polls open, let everybody get a chance to weigh in. A couple more seconds. Okay, I'll ask the organizers to close the polls, and if we have a slide that'll show the poll results. Can we show that? Okay. Okay. Now that we've answered the first polling question, let's look at practice niches themselves. Obviously, it's a function of client demand. And everybody who's in the public accounting space know that clients are asking you to do more and that you need to respond. And that's, again, that's a function of the economy. And more, and like I said, firms need to respond. So what they're doing is looking to leverage core strengths to offer specialized niche services. And that helps both your firm and your clients grow. And according to the AICPA, the more services a firm offers a client, the less likely that client is to leave. So if you just offer a client some tax services, you know, especially firms with a little lower billing rates, as many of you know, there's nothing more fickle than a low 1040 tax client. They'll leave for a $50 fee or go down the street. But if you offer said client, perhaps you do maybe a business valuation for them, or you do some financial planning. That's 3 services that they would have to exchange in order when they find a new accounting firm. So it will increase exponentially the more services that you offer a client. Let's look at the evolution of client services. CPAs are moving from a services-driven to a strategy-driven approach. And obviously that speaks for itself. You can't just offer services without a strategy behind it, and we're going to go into that a little bit later in the presentation on how to get an equitable mix of both. What CPAs are doing is driving their business where they want, in lieu of businesses taking them where they don't want to be. Decision making is becoming faster with time and audit, as you well know. Everything is real time these days. And the role of the CPA firm managing partner is slowly morphing into more of a CEO role. If you look at many of the top 100 firms, many of them are governed at the top by CEOs rather than managing partners. You're going to see this chief executive title a lot more in the 21st century accounting firm. Let's look at some of the top niche services, some of the bigger firms. Look at international tax, certainly one of them. World is flat, becoming more global. State and local taxes, obviously a huge practice area. Estate trust and gift tax, taxes for the these are for the top 100 firms. Taxes occupy the first 3 slots. Business valuations, certainly becoming a much in-demand client service. And litigation support. Many CPAs now have been asked to serve as expert witnesses, a lot of financial and marital cases. So litigation support is becoming a huge area. And this is according to the Accounting Today top 100 firms for 2013. Those are the 5 of the top practice areas that some of the top 100 firms have reported the largest amount of growth in year over year. Let's look at some niches that stand out among top U.S. firms, non-nationals, and some of the mid-sized firms. You have estate and financial planning, nonprofits, and we'll look at some of the who have really carved a niche in the nonprofit arena. IT consulting, obviously technology consulting is probably since 2000 has become a huge area for client demand, has grown exponentially. Telecommunications, news media, and entertainment. Manufacturing, certainly. And that's according to our friends at Inside Public Accounting. All right, let's look at some of the top client categories. Manufacturing, mid-sized businesses. There's 20,000 of those. Nonprofits, as we mentioned in a previous slide. Technology, real estate, and professional services, medical offices, dentist's office, veterinary offices. In fact, a lot of the, what we're seeing now is a lot of the top banks and financial institutions are making inroads into professional services, specifically the accounting profession, because they see that as a growing area. So you can see some of these top client categories, and you could equate them to your own firm, see how it measures up, and seeing maybe where there's some room for growth. And that, again, is according to Accounting Today's top 100 firms. All right, I mentioned at the outset mergers. That certainly is one way to grow. You see our friends trying to put the jigsaw puzzle together. And merger mania continues. For those of you, again, who have been reading the trades, who get the news wires from the various accounting publications, you know that M&A is not going away anytime soon. In fact, over the past 2 years, there's been over 300 deals. And those are just the ones that make the news. There's probably 200 to 300 more of smaller size firms, maybe the two sole practitioners, or maybe a 1 and 2 partner firm merging with a sole prac that didn't make the news or the news headlines. So 300 plus is a very, very conservative estimate, but you can see what's happened over the past 2 years regarding mergers. And just 2 years ago, I want everybody just to stop and take a look at this next statistic and just kind of take in and what this means. 55 of the top 100 firms reported at least executing one merger. So over half of the top 100 firms in the U.S. Completed a merger in 2011. That's an astounding statistic. Some of them that you may have read about: BDO, R.G. Wilts Robinson. That's a transaction that we helped advise on. Plant Moran, Blackman Callick. Blackman Callick was a big firm in the Chicago area, and Plant Moran absorbed them a while back, and what that did was basically take out the last remaining independent firm in the city of Chicago. Now they're all either big four, or national firms operating out of the Windy City. Baker Tilly, Holtz Rubenstein, and Prager and Fenton Metis Group, two tri-state New York City area firms merging. Those are just some of them. We could spend the entire presentation just on lists of mergers, but we'll move on here. And what you're seeing now, also, in addition to traditional mergers, you're seeing more what we call multidisciplinary transactions, and this ties into client niches and new areas of practice. Deloitte, well, not everybody has the resources of Deloitte, obviously, but they acquired a global consulting firm called Monitor last year, and they're rebranding that under the Deloitte Monitor Group umbrella. Foco Group, which is a mid-sized firm, a small to mid-sized firm that's done a number of acquisitions over the past couple of years. They bought up a forensics practice to strengthen their forensics and litigation support. Markham, another big super regional firm in the New York City area, bought an executive search firm, Horton International, to strengthen their Markham search. And one of the most progressive firms out in the Chicago area, Sikich, over the past 3 years, they've been very busy. They've acquired 3 technology consulting firms, a marketing firm, and a design firm, and just recently acquired the tech consulting arm from PKF Texas, which is a big firm in the Houston area. So as you can see, there's more of these multidisciplinary transactions which done to enhance or expand their client services reach. Let's look at some of the reasons. Obviously, geography and new markets. You know, as a full-service consulting firm dealing with a lot of M&A, we're getting a lot of requests from firms that say are in City A that want to be in City B. They don't have a presence there, and you're seeing a lot more of that. Perhaps a firm that's in New York wants to go down to Miami or go down to Philadelphia or Chicago. So that's what we call a new market reach. Then there's obviously this mergers for new niches, which is basically what we're speaking on today. Perhaps a firm wants to get into cost segregation. They don't have someone in the firm who's experienced at it. They're looking, they meet a firm that does have a nice area. There's enough culture and chemistry for both of them to get together, and so they have a merger, a niche merger. And competition. With the economy tanking since 2008, what's happened is a lot of the small and mid-sized firms have had to fend off competitive threats from much, much larger firms that they may not necessarily have, say, in 2005 or 2006. So maybe a small regional firm now finds itself bidding for an audit or a consulting job with engagement with an Ernst & Young or a Resnick Group, which have much larger and have far greater resources. So competition is another factor that's triggering this merger mania. And sadly, one of the drivers for mergers is lack of a formal succession plan, and we could spend a whole afternoon on succession planning, but needless to say, many of the small and mid-sized firms don't have a formal succession plan, and all of a sudden they realize that the managing partner or the owners are 2 to 3 years away from succession. There's nobody on the bench to take over, so they're forced into an 11th hour merger. So we're seeing, obviously, the past couple of years have borne witness to that. All right, let's look at what's keeping the practitioners up at night. I'm sure many of you share these same concerns. Our little friend there doesn't look like he's getting much shut-eye. Because of the economy, firms facing fee pressure from the existing clients. I mean, they want more for less, and that's certainly understandable given the economy. Many firms are having problems with AR and WIP. Their collection periods are longer, so you're seeing a lot of that. So what are they doing? They realize that they need to expand beyond traditional services to stay competitive, what we call boutique offerings and distinguishing services. And we'll explore a little bit about that in a couple of minutes. Clients obviously demanding more interaction and personal service from their CPA. And with the advent of technology, obviously that's probably cut down on a lot of in-person client visits. You can do everything by email. The cloud has taken over. It's a double-edged sword, though, because you lose that personal connection. And the clients want more interaction from the CPA. And according to the AICPA, they surveyed about 2 years ago, and 36% of business clients state they are considering switching accounting firms. So fully 1/3 of an accounting firm's clients are mulling a change in accounting firms. And you want to know why? They don't feel that their CPA provides enough attention. They don't feel they're getting that personal touch. And that is probably, a function of the advancements in technology. Like I said, there's a flip side to that. The cloud has made it easier for a lot of firms, but it's all, like I mentioned, it's also prompted that loss of personal connection. As the headline says, that was then, this is now. Before the economy tanked in 2008, and I'm sure many of you are certainly in tune with this, there was plenty of business to go around. Firms were basically order takers. They just had to pick up the phone. Clients were calling them. We need to, giving them as much work as they have. Now, more traditional work is competitively bid, tax and audit. And unfortunately, what's happened as a result of that, you're seeing a lot of the lowballing, where the lowest price and not necessarily the best client service will win out. And we like to call that a race to the bottom. And unfortunately, that's a byproduct of a tanking economy. Perhaps a larger firm with far more resources can say, hey, look, something. You give us this consulting engagement, and we'll throw in the tax return for free. And a lot of 3 and 4 partner firms can't effectively compete against that. And unfortunately, that's a function of the times as well. The silver lining to that is firms with strong niche capabilities have a lot more negotiating power when it comes to that. Like I mentioned in a previous slide, where the Institute showed that the more services you can offer a client, or the more distinct services you can offer a client, the harder it is for that client to leave. So there's a nice ratio going on between services offered and retention. All right, the practitioner's top concern, how to bring in new clients, and I'm sure that's not alien to any of you. It's always how to bring in a new client. Again, I'm going to pull from an Institute poll. They recently polled nearly 600 firms in 5 size classes. You have sole practitioners, firms with 2 to 5 professionals, 6 to 10 professionals, 11 to 20 professionals, and 21 and greater professionals. And not surprisingly, bringing in new clients ranked as the #1 concern in 3 of those 5 firm classes, and no lower than 3rd among any of the groups. So obviously it's a very real and enduring concern for many of you. And hopefully, you can get some ideas this afternoon and go forward. Look at some of the recent trends. CPA firms moving away from being the client's most trusted Costco. Now, if you remember, maybe not even as many as 10 years ago, a lot of CPA firms were trying to be all things to all people. And what I mean by that is their websites often highlighted as many as 15 to 20 different client services. Now, unless you're, a decent-sized firm, I don't know how effectively you can service 15 to 20 different client services and offer client niches. And if you really wanted to drill down, I would expect that less than half of those with 15 to 20 have an actual partner in charge of those client niches. So that would prompt the worst case scenario, and that being you overpromise a client and you underdeliver. And with anything else, obviously, the first thing to do is due diligence before you start. When you do a merger, you do due diligence, or anything you would buy a car, you do due diligence. Starting a new client niche is no different. First of all, you start off by defining the niche that you want to be in. What makes sense for you? Then what you need to do is identify key drivers in the service lines and then begin interacting in that market, whether, whatever market that is, whether it's food service, whether it's construction, whether it's nonprofits, auto dealerships, media, whatever it is, and make a determination whether that's viable for your firm. So if you're what I mean by that is if you're a tax firm, tax-centric firm, you do heavy tax, obviously, financial planning would be a viable niche for you to go into because there's a natural segue. And we'll look at, specifically we'll look at financial planning a little bit later on this afternoon. But determine whether it's viable. That's the first step. And you have to find, if you say, okay, we're going to offer wealth planning, you've got to outline how your firm and potential clients, not just existing clients of that service, are going to locate each other. So there's got to be a clear strategy. You can't just say, oh, we're going to offer, cost segregation and hope people come to us. And we'll talk about, maybe some of the approaches you should take to let some of the industries know that or the people involved with certain industries know that you service that line. And we'll look at that. And then, of course, like anything else, you have to determine the channels of distribution. Okay, continuing in due diligence, the three critical questions you need to answer. And this goes back to the previous slide. How well is your firm aligned with the niche you're targeting? As I mentioned, if you're a tax firm and you're looking into wealth management, you're probably aligned very well. If you're, if you're into nonprofits and wealth management, maybe that's not such a great fit. Could be, but maybe not necessarily. And obviously, read up on that industry. What, if any, are the current trends in that industry niche? And like anything else, how well has that niche been doing currently? Not only now, but maybe you want to take a 3-year track record to see how well it's doing. Construction maybe a couple of years ago wasn't, or housing starts weren't great. So maybe that was not an industry you probably wanted to be in 2009, 2010. But if you've been reading the paper, housing starts are up, so it's starting to pick up. So that's it's all doing your homework and due diligence. But that's where you basically basic stuff you have to start. Second polling question of, let's look at it. How has your firm established any new client niches over the past year? First one, yes. Currently in the process? No, but we're thinking about it. No, we're satisfied with our current offerings. And I'm going to ask the presenter to keep the organizer to keep the polls open so everybody has a chance to weigh in. And let's keep it open for a couple of seconds. Remember, you need to answer all three in order to receive the 1 CPE credit for this presentation. Okay, now can I ask the organizer to close the polls and show the audience the results? And we'll give you a few seconds to look at the results. Okay, let's go on. Let's find out how to start practice niches. Again, questions to ask. We ask you to what niche you want to be in. Is that niche underserved in your practice area? You know, if you have 3 or 4 firms offering the same thing and you view them as competitors, it probably isn't a good one. So the best advice would be find a niche that is underserved and yet practical. So if you're in the middle of New York City, you know, agriculture probably is not a niche you would be viable. But find one that is underserved in that practice area. Again, obviously this is basic. Is it a firm with growth potential? And second of all, do you have any clients currently in that niche that you're not servicing? If you do, that's probably lost revenue, lost opportunity. One of the most important things is find the champion in the firm. I remember, you know, in my former career as an editor-in-chief, I remember doing a story on a firm that decided after 2 years to finally go paperless. Now, it took 2 years for everybody to buy in to the fact that they're going paperless. But you need a champion, so hopefully this won't take 2 years. Everybody recognizes the need to distinguish your firm, forge a competitive point of difference. So you need to appoint a champion in the firm. Who's going to take charge of that? And as I mentioned previously, do you have partner buy-in? And if not, what do you need to do to get it? And then ask yourself, how do we market these new services to both existing and new clients? I mean, is it a newsletter? Do you attend association meetings regarding that? Which are all viable strategies. But then you have to map out, like any kind of marketing plan, you have to map that out. Let's look at some of the advantages of offering what may be to many of you new and unique client niches. As I mentioned before, it forges a competitive point of difference. If you have a small CPA firm and you across the street there's another small CPA firm, you both offer tax and audit, you know, what's going to win you the client engagement as opposed to your competitor? You need a competitive point of difference. Say, you know something, if you're going after a client who may be a real estate developer, say, you know, hey, we offer cost segregation. The guy across the street doesn't. So that's what that does. It forges a competitive point of difference. What it also does is it positions your firm as experts in what is, as you saw, you know, early on in this presentation, it's a fairly crowded marketplace. You've got 87,000 points of competition, basically, of firms. So it positions your firm as an expert. Oh yes, XYZ, they do cost segregation, they can help you, or they do lit support, or they do wealth planning. So it positions your firm as an expert. And conversely, what that does is increases the client focus and needs. If they have a problem, they come to you. They come to you anyway with problems. But now that you're a specialist, can you help them with a problem? So again, you're their most trusted advisor. This only increases that exponentially. And as I said, specialty firms obviously can get much more specific than a generalist practice. Again, you know, the more specialty client niches you offer and have people to support that. I had showed you a slide earlier about some firms advertising, you know, 20, 25 client service niches on their websites. Again, I doubt they have partners in charge or champions of everything, but it's imperative that you have a partner in charge or someone who's the head of that specialty niche. And we'll talk about how to get that, or if you can find it in-house, if you have it on the bench, if you have him or her on the bench. All right, some caution flags. Just a little friend here, the bottom right-hand corner. Starting a niche without necessarily ancillary support, and that includes, billing systems, referral sources. Where are you going to get your business? Do you have referrals that are going to get that? You can't just start it, helter-skelter without a plan. And this is all part of the earlier slide that we showed regarding due diligence. I want to make more money. That is the absolute wrong reason by itself to start a practice niche. Obviously, you want to make more money. You want to increase revenues. We talked about the difficulty of organic growth with the current economy. Yes, obviously, the end goal to creating a new client niche is to make more money. But if that's the only reason you're going to do it, I have a little bit of I have a sage advice for you. You want to make more money right away, because it may, a new client niche may not show a double-digit return the first year. You have to assign a practical revenue growth to that. We'll show that a little bit later. But if you want to make more money, here's my advice: raise your fees instead of going through the machinations of starting, and the difficulties of starting a new practice niche. So I want to make more money, which is fine as as an end game, but that's not the only reason to start a practice firm, a practice niche, nor should it be. Lack of intellectual capital and growth strategy. Maybe you don't have the people in your firm who are experts with auto dealerships, or with construction, or with restaurants, or with sporting goods, or nonprofits, and you don't have a growth strategy. Maybe you need some outside help to help map one out. But if you don't have that, that is one of the definite caution flags. So what you need, you need to do a top-down assessment if you're in-house talent. Who do I have? Who do I need? Do I have to go outside and get it if necessary? If I'm really determined, if we're really determined to start this, do you have to go outside? Maybe you merge with a firm, as we mentioned earlier. We're seeing a lot of mergers for client niches as well. Maybe you do that. And one of the mistakes everybody makes is ignore their core strengths. If you're strong in tax, don't abandon tax or your focus on tax and put 99.9% to starting this new practice niche. Because if all you're going to do is erode with what brought you, or who brought you to the dance. So you have to kind of do walk the tightrope of an equitable mixture of resources between your core strengths, leveraging your core strengths, and your new practice niches. Do not forget. Okay. All right, let's look at how to begin a practice niche. And for that, we'll look at wealth management. There's been kind of I won't say there was a retreat and kind of a advance on wealth management we've seen over the past 12, 13 years. Say around 1999, 2000, when it coincided with the tech bubble, there was a lot of CPAs who finally just, the light bulb went off and say, hey, you know something? I am already handling my clients' sensitive financial information. Why don't I just get licensed and handle their financial planning as well? And on paper, that strategy made sense. But what they discovered was that they could not devote 8 hours a day to tax and audit, or their core strengths, and 2 hours a day to wealth management and make the wealth management arm successful. So they had to find a way to balance that out, and a lot of them sort of dissipated from the wealth management ranks. But lately, and you'll see a slide later on about how successful some firms have become penetrating this niche. Obviously, you determine your client need. Would there be growing opportunities? I mentioned with your tax clients, it's a natural segue. Do you go it alone? Do you get partners licensed with Series 7, Series 66, etc., allowing you to sell securities and insurance? Do you form a strategic affiliation with many of the broker-dealers around the country that work specifically with accounting firms like HD Vest or First Global or Buckingham Asset Management? Those are just several of them that have strong affiliations in the CPA community. Do you form a subsidiary with a company that is an LLC? Do you establish a registered investment advisor unit? Run that separately. However, that involves a lot of compliance guidelines and SEC mandates that must be followed to follow an IRA. Are you a fee only, or are you going to work on a commission basis? So there's a lot of decisions that you have to make on, in that respect. But let's look at some firms and show how they've been successful. We'll look at some firms who went into wealth management and now have billions in AUM, and I just want you to take a minute to study these figures. You have Plante Moran, a large Midwestern super regional firm. They have almost $8.2 billion in assets under management. My CIO Wealth Partners, which is a firm right here in New York City, they have over $6 billion. Joel Isaacson and Company, another firm in the New York area, $4.6 billion. McGladrey Wealth Management, part of the McGladrey firm, they have over $4 billion. Gilman Ciocia, primarily a tax and financial planning firm, they have over $3 billion. And Clifton Larson Allen, their wealth management arm, handles over $3 billion. And that's a prime example of what I was talking about earlier in the presentation about some of the large mergers. Many of you who have been reading the, the accounting publications remember them merging with Larson Allen and Clifton Gunderson. That created a $600 million, Midwestern powerhouse. So we'll see that. As you can see, the impact that has had. Let's look at some of the, outside of wealth management, look at some of the firms with other successful niche services. Armanino McKenna, a very, very successful firm out in the San Francisco Bay Area. A couple of years ago, they started a media group which offered public relations, crisis management, also advertising, marketing services, and brand development. And the interesting thing about this is Armanino McKenna, which also has an excellent technology consulting area, they have forged a great niche in that as well, is they didn't even hire a CPA to run this. They took an editor from one of the local Bay Area business journals who now oversees that arm for them, and that's been terrifically profitable and successful for them. Then you have SS&G Cleveland, one of the who has one of the largest restaurant consulting groups in the country. Each year they run a restaurant CFO boot camp and also put out a benchmarking update for that industry. MBAF in Miami, and since 1972 they've had an auto dealership unit, and they authored the Auto Dealership Engagement Manual published by the AICPA. Let's look at a couple of others. RBZ, they're Los Angeles, they specialize in law firms, and their RBZ law firm report provides detailed compensation data by the size of the firm, location, and even the practice area. And then two firms that may be well known to many of you, Kearney and Aronson. Those are two of the top firms in the country for government contractors. Then there's RAFA, which is a successful firm in the DC area. They specialize in nonprofits. And here's an interesting one. Joseph Eve, a smaller firm in the Montana area, they specialize in Indian reservations. So as you can see, practice niches are far and wide. They can run the gamut from wealth management to Indian reservations. And like anything else, necessity is the mother of invention. Following the Supreme Court's decision last year to uphold Obamacare, and we've certainly heard a lot about Obamacare, defunding, problems in setting up the exchanges, but one firm was proactive, and that was ID Bailey, firm out in the Great Plains area. They debuted its Employer Health Reform Analytics Service, new practice area designed to help business owners respond to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, which is the formal name for Obamacare. And their service includes counseling on employee insurance, including penalties, local, regional, or federal health and insurance exchanges. And we've seen, since that time, we've seen more CPAs follow suit. And we come to the last of the polling questions. If you were to start a new niche, what strategy would you pursue? Train an existing partner and begin from scratch. Try to recruit an experienced niche partner from another firm. Execute a merger, as we mentioned, none of the above. Let's keep the polls open for about 20 seconds or so, and then we'll return. Okay, I'll ask the organizer to close the polls and show the audience the results. Okay, that's the final of our trio of polling questions. Okay, let's look at some of the factors that can determine success in a particular client niche. Obviously, it's a combination of market conditions and having a committed leader. We talked about finding the champion of your firm, and that's imperative for this to work. Again, don't relegate your established offerings. Don't abandon what brands, as I mentioned before, such as tax and audit, to the back burner. Basically, what you need to do is fire on all cylinders. So, again, strategy development consists of three dynamics: services, channels of distribution, and targets. This involves selection, innovation, and packaging, obviously. And then network. I can't stress or overstress the importance of network. Just as an example, if you're looking to go into business valuation or litigation support, my advice would be to interact with legal associations, perhaps divorce attorneys. They have associations, because that's where the bulk of your referrals are going to come from, especially when it comes to valuations and those messy matrimony cases. So that would probably be a good suggestion to find the legal associations if you're interested in that. Find out where they meet, how often they meet, introduce yourself, pass out some cards. That's probably a good starting point. As far as restaurants, every state has a state restaurant association, and many of them have food service member associations. So if you're interested in that, each year Chicago hosts the National Restaurant Association show. There's plenty of prospects to go around there. It might not be a bad idea to go see one of your local or national shows. Cost segregation. Obviously, builders groups would be important, or related associations. Ask them. Don't be afraid to ask them questions. Give a builders group a call, or a trade publication in that particular industry. They'll be happy to spend some time answering questions about the growth in that industry, and we'll go into that probably a little bit later. I'm sure I'm going to field some questions on how to start that. And then, obviously, you have to hit the ground running. Either you find a leader in your firm, or you have to go out and get one. That's basically cut and dried. You can't have somebody who's a tax-centric partner. All of a sudden, you're asking him to do cost segregation or litigation support. He may not have the experience. There may be somebody in another firm who's looking to leave, or, like I mentioned before, it could culminate with a merger. So find that niche leader. That's critical. And again, niche champions, analytical, strategical, and above all, lead that niche. Again, don't overpromise and underdeliver. You have to assign practical revenue and growth metrics to the new undertaking. It's just like an expansion team in professional sports, if I can use that comparison. Very rarely are they going to have a one-loss record a one loss record of that's greater. You have to assign, be practical about it. Don't play don't play catch as catch can. So if you're expecting double-digit growth, that probably is not going to happen the first year. Remember, the smart money is on specialization, not generalization. Again, forging a competitive point of difference between you and your competitors. Remember, niche specialties are a value proposition. We talked about valuation. This adds extra value to your firm, especially if you have forged, like many of the firms I showed you on a previous slide. If you forged a competitive point of difference, you've forged a good reputation, not necessarily national, because I know many of you are not national firms, but within your community for handling, certain client services. Like I said, you forged a competitive point of difference, and that's a value proposition. Most firms offer traditional tax and accounting services. My advice is don't be like most firms. If you want to stand out, if you want to stand out, I've heard someone say, if you want to stand out, you've got to branch out. So don't be like most firms. Both the client and the market are going to perceive you as an expert. So that will certainly go a long way. And firms that complement those client niches with specialization will ultimately win the engagements. And obviously that speaks for itself. As I mentioned, I had that example earlier in the presentation about two firms across the street. If you both offer the same basic services, but you offer IT consulting or wealth management and they don't, there's a chance you will win the engagement. Okay, and that brings us to the end of the formal part of our presentation. I'll be happy to take some questions. And I see we got a couple coming in. And, okay, I got one here from Jim. And Jim says, Bill, we're interested in starting a construction industry practice, and how do we learn about that particular industry? What's involved with doing market research? Okay, Jim, well, that's a great question. We touched on the construction industry a few times during the presentation, but the first thing I would do is go basic. Try the Yellow Pages or the Internet searches. Or you could Google your geographic area and type of business and see how many hits you get, for construction. There's a lot of sub-sites now that, if you want to do a restaurant review, you get, you just type in the restaurant, and then depending on the search engine, will give you all kinds of hits. Basically, Jim, my advice to you is the goal is to learn all about that channel that you want to be in. And research is going to provide you the information you need to build a business from your current business. And basically, leads, remember, are always a byproduct of the process. As a former reporter, all accomplished people love talking about themselves. I found that out in my many years of journalism, and that's what basically a research call is about. You got to find the leaders. Say the leader is the Acme Construction Company, just to pull a name out. You call them up, you introduce yourself, say, hi, my name is Jim, we're growing our construction. Learn as much as I can about this industry. Can I spend some time with you? They will be, trust me, Jim, they will be more than happy to do that. Also, go prepared, craft questions that will sort of optimize your time together. Don't ask how's business, and certainly don't ask for business on the first call. Some questions I would ask, how would you characterize the business climate in this industry? What are your two or three key issues that top the list of concerns? How do you keep up to date on what's going on? Which professional associations are most respected? And depending on those questions, then I would go from there. It gives you some industry, some associations. I would contact those associations. So it's a building process. Like I said, do your due diligence. Then you ask them, is there anybody else you think I should talk to? Get more than one opinion. So that would be my advice in construction. Okay, Jill wants to know, we're a small firm, but looking how to explore some new client niches. We don't have anyone on staff, nor we can make an offer to someone outside the firm. What should we do? And I think this ties into another question that just came in. The first thing I do is a top-down review of your current client niches and see where the growth lies. Maybe it's your tax department. Maybe it's your audit department. In your case, it may be proactive to send out a mailing to your current client list and ask, what 3 or any number of services that we currently don't offer would you like to see us? And you'd be surprised how many clients will be proactive and answer that. Maybe it's a service that they've been wanting to get from you for a number of years, but they just haven't mentioned it. So that would be my suggestion to do that. Then basically I would take a list, determine a pecking order, take the top 2, and then determine if it's cost efficient to begin without sacrificing your core niches. So that would be my advice to you, Jill. Okay. See if there's any other questions here. I don't see any more. So with that, hopefully you've enjoyed the presentation. Please take a moment to fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. You will get it, and also your CPE link will be mailed to you. So, oh, wait a minute. I did, before we sign off, we could get one more question. This is from Shirley. How can a smaller firm create a new niche when funds and time are tight? I'm studying for my Series 7 and 66, but I'm nervous of how I'll manage it all and not neglect existing clients who will benefit from the niche. Shirley, that's a great question, and you raise a point that I mentioned earlier, is why a lot of people kind of retreated from that financial planning niche because they couldn't devote enough time to either. I would basically, in your case, if you're a smaller firm, I would start small. Don't take the focus off it, but say, something we also, if you take your existing clients, say, we also do some wealth planning. I would start small. You don't have to, you don't have to do a massive estate and wealth planning thing. Maybe you can make a few investments for clients to start out, see how that works. This way, and you will have your Series 7 and 66, so that obviously you could always put that to good use. So I would start small and then see how that works, and then gradually build it up. That would be my advice there. I'm glad we can get one last question in. Again, please take the time to fill out our survey, what you would like to see, because it would help us with future presentations and topics. And I hope everyone enjoyed the webinar. And again, thanks for taking the time out in your busy schedule to join us this afternoon. For Transition Advisors, I'm Bill Carlino saying so long and have a great afternoon.